I do think that we are on an inexorable march towards people, one single person kind of being at the center of bigger and bigger and bigger things. And NFTs are a piece of that. And blockchain generally is a piece of that, but APIs are a piece of that. And the fact that like it's easier to pull software off the shelf. Like you're seeing these trends happen anyway, where a decade ago, maybe it would have taken a 50-person team to where it takes a 5-person team to get to today. And so like everything is kind of coming down and moving faster and faster and faster and faster. And there will certainly be a point, and who knows what it is. Maybe it's a single person with an army of AI tools at their disposal and APIs and NFT and whatever else. But at some point, there will be a single person at the center of a $1 trillion thing. I mean, like if you think about Satoshi as like the single person behind Bitcoin, or maybe a group of people or whatever, but that's a $1 trillion thing now that was kind of started by one person and has no employees. And so I think like, at some point in the future, I don't even think it's that, bold of a proclamation to say that I think that will happen at some point, because that's just the way that the trends are moving. And I think things just kind of keep moving faster and faster.
What is up, everyone? This is episode 12, and today we are talking the business side of Packy McCormick, the founder of the Not Boring newsletter. And the Not Boring newsletter is honestly my favorite newsletter on business and tech, which if you think about it is just such a cluttered category. It seems like everyone on Substack, tech Twitter is talking about business and tech, but somehow Packy has managed to stand out. In the past year, he's grown to 47,000 subscribers. And get this, he says his newsletter will make $1 million in 2021. You heard that right, $1 million. So we get into that and how Packy turned this side hustle, because before this, he was, my words, not his, but a tech bro at Breather. He left that, he tried to do a startup, failed, and decided to focus on this newsletter full time. And now he's grown it into what it is today. So we get into his story, that career move, how stressful it is to be a newsletter writer, and just his overall journey. And then in the second part of the interview, we get into his piece, Power to the People, which I think is a prediction on where the creator economy is going. We talk NFTs. I even made Packy give me a price target for Ethereum. So all you crypto heads out there, make sure to listen till the end. But before I jump back in, first thing you need to do is, if you're not, subscribe to Packy's newsletter. Just type it into the Google machine. It's the first thing that comes up. Just type in Not Boring. And to all my podcast listeners, please subscribe to the podcast. Please give me that 5-star review. It means a ton. If you're on a YouTube, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, and smash that keyboard to give me an amazing comment. Tell me how amazing I am. Tell me how great the podcast is. Anyway, I can't believe I'm doing all this. But anyway, let's get back into the episode. I think you're going to like it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at the one and only Packy, the writer, the owner, the CEO of the Not Boring newsletter. Is that an accurate description, or did I miss something?
I think I use a different title for myself every time I say what I do. So any one of those works.
So I always like to start off with a bang. And I remember when this came across my Twitter feed, it says, I want Not Boring to make $1 million this year, which sounds fucking crazy for a free newsletter, but I think it's possible. Love that tweet.
I woke up feeling a little spicy. I was, this thing is such a roller coaster where some days I'm like, oh, I'm at the top of the world. I can't believe this person shared what I wrote. And yeah, it must have been genius, because if that person shared it, then I'm probably a genius. And then some days I feel like no one's ever going to read what I write ever again, and no sponsor that I work with is ever going to be happy. So that was the morning that I woke up on the top of the roller coaster, just feeling spicy. But so far, so good towards that goal, I think.
You woke up feeling dangerous. So where are we on that goal? Can you reveal where we're trending? Are we on the right run rate?
We are on the right. Yeah. If we do startup metrics, certainly the run rate is there, which is, again, fucking crazy, but the run rate's there. So trying not to fall, but.
Okay. So let me say this back to you once this guy is accelerating outside my window stops. So you have a free newsletter that is going to, you think, make $1 million this year. based on what's currently doing. And what, a year and a half ago, what were you doing?
Yeah. So this is not recurring revenue, right? So that's the challenge. I decided to go ad and not subscription. And so I am at the whims of, advertisers and sponsors wanting to continue to work with me. But on the current run rate, it should make over $1 million this year, which again is wild. So I started writing this a little over a year ago, last April. I had been writing a newsletter on the side while I was working at a company called Breather, grew that in a year to all of 400 people, never made a dollar, then quit, decided to do this full time after a startup that I was thinking about doing didn't work because of COVID, and because it was a bad idea also. And so last kind of like April, I decided to do this full time and just give myself a shot. And so for the first, call it 5 months, I made $0 on this newsletter. And then it's kind of grown since then.
Let's start. What is Not Boring to anybody who's not subscribed?
Yeah, so Not Boring is a twice weekly newsletter that talks about tech companies, strategy, finance, companies big and small, and trends. I've been getting a little bit more into Web3 recently, so I don't know, maybe it's about protocols now too, but yeah, it's about tech and strategy and finance.
What I want to unpack is why you felt confident enough to say, all right, I'm going to quit my startup job. I'm going to do this thing. And what did you think you were bringing to the market that wasn't already there? There's a million Substack writers out there. No offense to Substack writers, but there's a lot of people. Why did you think you had something unique to bring to the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I didn't quit to do the newsletter. I was doing a newsletter on the side. I quit because it was time. It was 6 years at this company. We had brought in a new exec team, and I no longer liked being in exec meetings. I still loved my team, but it was time to go. And Breather has since filed for bankruptcy in the U.S. and in the U.K. So it was a good move. I was thinking about starting my own thing. That wasn't going to work. It was another kind of physical place-based thing. COVID hit. It was very early, and it was kind of an out. I was being, I think, stubborn that everybody around me was telling me that it wasn't a good idea. And in my head, I knew it wasn't a good idea, but I'm stubborn and I thought I could kind of figure it out. And so COVID ended up being, I think, a really good out for me to say, like, yeah, I tried, didn't work. So I had this newsletter. Let's see. So there was no confidence there. It was really like, I don't have anything else. I have a bunch of free time and I'm stuck in my apartment unless I want to go, I applied for, I talked to a couple of people about consulting jobs, and one of them would have required me to go in. And this was like early COVID, and my wife was pregnant and I just wasn't going to do that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to try to do consulting stuff right now. I'm just going to try to write this thing and see what I can do. For the first year, while I was writing kind of that different newsletter per my last email, I tried to avoid writing about business strategy and tech and all of that because Ben Thompson does it and so many people do it really, really well. And then finally I realized like that's the thing that I like writing about. And so if I'm going to be going as a full-time newsletter writer anyway, which was a weird career choice, like why not try to write about the thing that I wanted to write about? And so the thing that I did that I thought was maybe a little bit different was I realized that Ben Thompson, like once you hit a certain audience size and once people are paying for you and once like CEOs of major companies are reading what you write and you've developed a certain style, you can't be wrong about things and you can't like make crazy claims and do all of that kind of stuff. So there was that one piece, which was like, I can just get crazier and kind of more far out there. And the other one was, what if I combined kind of pop culture and business strategy or economics or finance or whatever else? And so I would do like, I don't know, here's how the Mickey Mouse Club is like creative destruction, or all like these like different mashups where every week I would pick kind of like one serious topic and one pop culture-y or, 90s movie type thing and try to mash them up. That became really hard. That was like twice the work because I had to spend time thinking about both what I wanted to write about and then being like, fuck, what movie is Spotify's recent Joe Rogan announcement like? And that became too much of a pain in the ass. So at that point I was just like, I'll keep the tone, I'll keep like kind of the fun style and the shitty images that I make and all of that, but I'll focus it more on kind of the topic in hand instead of trying to squeeze a movie reference in there.
Yeah, what got you on my radar was, so I work at a tech company and I say the word API all the fucking time. I use the word API like I know what an API is, and everyone in tech uses the word API. And I didn't ever know, but I was too scared to even Google what an API was, because that would be an embarrassment acknowledgement of myself. Like, where am I in my career that I've been using API for 6 years and I have no fucking idea what it is? And I thought your piece on it was why, in my opinion, people love Not Boring, because it acknowledged that you had no idea kind of what it was.
Totally. Right. I'd written a couple months before that a piece on Stripe, which is an API first company. It's like the API first company. You can't sit through a pitch with a new API first company without them at some point kind of bashfully being like, actually, we're kind of like Stripe for this thing. It happens every single time. Like you can see it in their eye when they're about to say that they're kind of like Stripe for that thing. And yet, like after all that Stripe fanboying, I didn't really know what an API was or like why it was a good business model or all of that. So I decided to go for it. That one, like, and this is that roller coaster on Sunday as I was writing that piece and I sent it out Monday morning. I went to my wife and my brother who like read and edit my stuff. And I was like, guys, would it be really bad if I just didn't send one tomorrow? Like, this is dog shit. Like, I can't send this thing tomorrow. Like, I don't understand. Like, I haven't fit it all together right. And then they both read it and they're like, actually, like, we love this one. Like, and they're honest with me when they don't. They're like, this one's really good. Like, I think this one's going to pop a little bit. And so that ended up, working out. But even after writing it, I was like, I don't know if I fully understand this well enough to hit send on the thing. And I'm kind of that afraid every week when I hit send something, but that one was particularly bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's just this open acknowledgement, which I think I appreciate in the space. Because, for instance, you said the word Stripe. If you were to ask me what company I wish I had invested in, Stripe. Now, if you ask me why, I don't think I could go past that sentence, right? Just because I see tech Twitter and I'm like, well, obviously Stripe is the thing to invest in. But very few people really open the kimono and say, all right, what actually are we talking about? So how do you even pick up topics, and how stressed do you get in the week? Because it seems like you have an emotional roller coaster of a week.
I get incredibly stressed every week. Like I'm writing a piece for tomorrow that as of last night, again, I was kind of like, oh man, like I'm going to have to go back, and this is a sponsored deep dive on a company. I was like, I'm going to have to go back to them and say like, would you guys mind if we did this next week? Cause like, I haven't figured out how to tell your company's story in the right way yet, which would have been kind of an embarrassment. But got it together. So I just kind of sit in this basement and kind of just bang on the idea until something I like, it really feels like I'm just kind of sitting here and trying to find the right angle into the story. Like yesterday I sat at the computer for and by sat at the computer, like some of it's writing, some of it's like, what if I like went on Twitter? If I went on Twitter, then maybe there's a good idea there or something. And then I'll like search for that company's name on Twitter. So at least it feels like I'm doing work or whatever. And then at some point, like an angle just kind of comes to me. Right now they're reviewing the piece. And so I don't know at all if they're going to think it's good or not, but like I'm at least, I was able to start with a thread and just kind of like keep going down into the piece. But I think the process is a lot of that. It's a lot of spending time just kind of like sitting here thinking, starting to write something, realizing that I don't have the right angle on it, spending time at Twitter, seeing what people are on Twitter, seeing what people are talking about, and then like kind of finding things that I think would be interesting to write about. But really, like, it's a panic every week because I hit send on Thursday. And then as of Thursday after, like, from call it 9:30 to 1 p.m. on Thursday, I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, I have until Monday to write this piece. Like, this is awesome. And then by like 1 p.m., I'm like, oh man, I should not have rested for a couple hours. I feel incredibly behind now. This is terrible. And so like, it's that twice a week, all the time. And it's, I don't think, going to get any easier. And if it does, I think that'll be a bad sign that like I've gotten too comfortable on this. But I don't know. There's at least, luckily, like there's enough to explore now where I think the crypto and Web3 thing is opening up this whole new thing that people don't understand that I want to understand better. So it's been fun to kind of have that as at least a backup.
I mean, yeah, I get it, but I also, when you say things like that, it makes me think there's this mantra that everybody should be a creator, and sure, everyone is a creator to some extent, but that amount of stress you're putting on yourself isn't always fun. Like, I don't know if everybody wants to do that. Some people want to just live their life normally and not sit in a basement and bang away on a keyboard.
Totally. I mean, I think there's definitely, and it's all weird, right? Because it's just like, it's all in my head. If I didn't send on a Monday, like there's maybe one person in the world who would be like, did you not send an email today? And like, no one would actually care because they'd read the 50 other newsletters in their inbox. But to me, I'm like, oh my God, like if I don't send, this is it. Like I'm done. And
when you want to know what's pathetic, you have, I looked at this before. You have 46,000 subscribers, 46K. So you're a big deal. I am not a big deal. This podcast is not a big deal. I stress about this shit like you wouldn't believe. Like my wife, I can't use the word podcast around her. I'm like, what'd you think about this? I just thought that episode sucked. I wish I could get this. And it's I know that exact feeling, and I relate to it. But we could go deep into the psychology of a creator. But before we do, so you make $1 million, and it seems
not yet.
Let's get back to the million. So you're making $1 million, but from an outsider, it seems like most of the people making money on Substack are making money on subscription and not ads based. So what was the move between picking, all right, I'm going to kind of zig versus zag and not do this? Because Ben Thompson, you reference, I'm subscribed to Ben Thompson. I pay him $15 a month. I probably read 1 out of every 4 if I'm being honest. I would love a free option, but I don't think he would give up that revenue.
Totally. I never started with that revenue. And when I started making the decision, like the numbers that I was thinking about were so small, right? I was like, once I hit 5,000, I'll probably turn on subscriptions. And so if you do that math quickly, like let's say that I can get $100 a year from people. So that's like, $10 a month with some discount for doing annual, and it all blends out to $10. And like at the very best case, you're going to get a 10% conversion to paid. And so you're talking about 500 people paying me $100 a year, which starts out at, $50,000, which at that point, like it's not bad. And you can survive on that amount of money, but like I can go get a job that makes more money than that. And then I don't have to tell my friends and family and whoever else, my young son, that his dad's a newsletter writer. So, it better make it worth it.
Do you live in Brooklyn, by the way?
Normally live in Brooklyn. We're currently, like I said, I'm in a basement in my in-laws' house because we have the baby. So we've been doing this for the past few months, which has been great.
If you were a newsletter writer in Brooklyn, it's almost as bad as being a podcaster in Brooklyn, which is
right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's embarrassing no matter any way you slice it, but it certainly wasn't worth it for 50,000. And the other thing is that, I got addicted to the growth piece of it, and I don't do any like really growth hacky things, but I just mean like I still have my new subscriber and my unsubscribe notifications on. Like I check that all the time, and I love the growth of it. And I think that's part of the fun. Like if I'm going to spend all this time and all this stress writing, like if it goes to 500 people, it seems like it's not worth it, even if they're paying me $100 a month. And then the other piece of it is like, it definitely slows growth. Like Ben Thompson would probably have a much bigger audience if all his stuff were free. He is doing just fine. And he's made that choice, and he made the right choice for him, I think. But for me too, like I think most people who can probably charge Ben Thompson to their company. And when I was starting to think about that decision, literally I was still writing about like Disney princesses and Facebook or something. And so like, I didn't see how people could really charge that to their company. And so like, there's enough good subscription stuff out there, and I like growing, and all those things kind of combined, where I was like, I'm just going to keep this open. Like worst case scenario, I have a bigger base to then kind of turn on subscriptions with later. But then at some point I threw up an ad deck. I was talking to a sponsor, built a deck for them, and just threw it up on Twitter and got a bunch of inbound. And so I was like, oh, cool, I can actually make money. And this is more than I would have made on the subscription side. And it's just kind of grown from there. And I think, I don't know, people like complaining about how hard ad sales is, and all. It's twice a week. I get to talk to a bunch of different companies. I do a little bit of investing, raising a fund right now. And so like a lot of the sponsors end up becoming investments, and like it just all works together really, really nicely, and keeping it open just leaves it open for more serendipity and more cool things to happen.
2 questions. First, so if the business side wanted to sponsor Not Boring, what is the current rate? So the current rate's public, or have you hidden them?
I mean, I started out with them public, and so I don't want to be bashful on them now, but a Monday sponsorship is 8,000. A Thursday sponsorship, it gets a little less viral, is 6,000. And then a sponsored deep dive on a company is 40,000. And so those are the ones that are the big money makers. And they were the biggest risk for sure. Because, when I sent the first one, I was like, oh my God, people are going to think I'm such a sellout here. Like I'm writing about a company and they're paying me and I'm just writing an essay. But I think I've been super clear in the communication on those, and the fact that, one, I am getting paid. I published a doc that I link every time that's like, here's how I pick these companies.
And then the second point, there's this macro trend in the last, I can't believe I just said the word macro trend, but I said it. So there's this trend in the influencer space or creator space where creators are now becoming investors. And I think you're seeing a lot of talk of creators raising funds, but you've been low key doing this for the past year, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of your business is a syndicate. Can you explain like how that works and how that kind of people have called it a flywheel between your newsletter and investing and sponsors?
Yeah, for sure. So over the summer, I had a friend who I almost partnered with when I was at Breather. He and his brother are these like Russian geniuses who were building robots that built rooms in like half an hour. And it was like not commercially viable, but it was really, really cool. We didn't partner. He ended up getting bought by Airbnb, went there for a little while, just spun out to do his own company, which is again kind of in like the combination of real estate and software. And so he's like, I'm having a hard time explaining to investors why this isn't just a real estate company. Could you write up a piece? And at that point, like the audience was so small and I was having fun with it. And I wanted to kind of like get more into the investing side anyway. And so I was like, yeah, I'll write up an investment memo. We'll send the demand for the syndicate to somebody else. And it like filled up really quickly. He got a bunch of inbound. He got like employee requests, like all sorts of good stuff that you'd want to have happen from this. And it helped him explain kind of how the company worked to investors. And from there, I got a bunch of inbound from different companies. He introduced me to people. I said that I was going to do it and just kind of set up a syndicate. And so sometimes, I'll write up a full memo and send it out to the list, which is like a deep dive, but I'm investing instead of getting paid. So it's a no-brainer move for companies. And I think it's good in a few different ways. One, I like having some skin in the game. Like it's easy to write about and shit on companies, but I think it's harder to actually say like, no, in this whole space, like if I'm publicly saying, even if I'm taking money, frankly, as a sponsor, it kind of shuts off the rest of the space, let alone like if I'm investing in a company. So I have to be like pretty thoughtful about how I do that. And it's real skin in the game to say like, all right, I'm picking this company in the space. So if I write positive things about other companies or negative, whatever, like that's going to be tainted. So like it needs to be worth it. Two, I think part of this whole broader trend of people investing is that investing is just getting more, and I'll match your macro trends with democratized. It is getting more democratized. And part of that is like, I thought when I was at a venture-backed company on an exec team, I still thought like the investing thing was this like, I thought investors had some like weird set of skills and knowledge that like I was never going to be able to achieve. And so just be like, look, you guys have been following this journey. You know that I'm an idiot. And I'm going to walk you through my investing process here. Maybe you're going to hate it and like you'd never ever put your money behind me and maybe you'll learn something here. So I think that part's really good because it just helps, I think, demystify, democratize, whatever, the investing side. And then it really does help companies tell their story and find employees and all of that kind of stuff. So it just works really well together. And companies who've done sponsored deep dives have become investments and vice versa. And it just all kind of works together pretty well.
Do you ever take a step back and realize or think about that, 5-10 years ago, there was so many gatekeepers in the way to do what you're doing right now? You have Twitter, which got you distribution that leads to your Substack, that you didn't have to, start writing for Forbes or I don't know, whatever other aging.
And I never would have even done that, right? Like I wouldn't have written for Forbes.
Right. You probably would still maybe be a Breather and then I just got laid off because they went bankrupt and you'd be trying to find the next company to join. And then I had the exact same opinion of these mystical venture capitalists, and you kind of jumped this route where you didn't, maybe you went to Stanford and have an MBA and wear vests.
No, I came up the hard way. I went to Duke and applied, had my deposit down at business school, and then decided not to go work at Breather. So I came up the hard way, but I've somehow been able to make it.
Yeah, when I have these conversations with a lot of this stuff where that never would have been possible, previously, where just to do what you're doing. And it's very cool that you are now able to invest. I feel the same way where like suddenly you can invest in things which you had built this like idea of it in your head, if you get what I'm saying.
Totally. It also comes with a lot of responsibility too, right? Like I think that's the other thing here is like letting people know that they can invest. Like it's really risky, particularly if you're not a good picker, which I have no idea if I am or not yet. And particularly in a heated part of a market, to say like, you guys should be investing in stocks or you guys should be investing in startups is really risky, right? Because like people can lose a lot of money doing that. I remember when I wrote about, I'd been writing about stocks for public companies for a little while, not really like, here's my price target, but just writing about public companies. And I wrote about Slack, and I wrote about why Slack was undervalued and why the market didn't appreciate it and blah, 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 blah. And then a couple of weeks later, Salesforce acquired Slack. And I got so many messages that were like, thank you. Like it popped. I bought it because of you. And I was like, whoa, you bought Slack because I wrote about Slack? Like that's crazy to me. And so I think on all of this, there does come a responsibility to not just say like, hey, if your friend's starting a startup, like you should throw money into that because you're probably going to lose that money. And so it's just as much about saying like, here are the risks to this and all of that.
I mean, obviously you knew that Salesforce was going to acquire Slack.
I figured that I could, alert Mark Benioff that it was maybe undervalued and an attractive buy. So
transitioning to, I think what fits the point of this podcast, which is a lot about the creator economy and where it's going. You wrote this piece in, I don't have the date in front of me, but Power to the Person, which I thought was amazing. And you started out with a pretty bold statement. And I'm going to read that statement to you, all right, and this audience. The creator economy and NFTs are a massive human potential unlocks. Even if certain assets are a short-term bubble, we are on the, I don't think I can pronounce this word right, inexorable, did I do that?
Yeah.
March towards individuals mattering more than institutions. Within 2 decades, we will have multiple trillion-dollar publicly traded entities with just one full-time employee, the founder. All right, that's
like
bold.
That?
And you even bolded it.
Provocative.
Yeah, I like it. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. So I mean, first, like that one, even that line is interesting, right? Because like I didn't have a hook like that, and then I forget if it was probably my brother, but somebody else may be reading it who was like, you should really like come out swinging here. And so I did, and I it's not that I don't believe that, but it's just like 2 decades is a time frame that I'm like kind of setting myself to and all of that. But I do think that we are on an inexorable march towards a single person kind of being at the center of bigger and bigger and bigger things. And NFTs are a piece of that. And blockchain generally is a piece of that, but APIs are a piece of that. And the fact that like it's easier to pull software off the shelf. Like you're seeing these trends happen anyway, where a decade ago, maybe it would have taken a 50-person team to where it takes a 5-person team to get to today. And so like everything is kind of coming down and moving faster and faster and faster and faster. And there will certainly be a point, and who knows what it is. Maybe it's a single person with an army of AI tools at their disposal and APIs and NFT and whatever else. But at some point, there will be a single person at the center of a $1 trillion thing. I mean, like if you think about Satoshi as like the single person behind Bitcoin, or maybe a group of people or whatever, but that's a $1 trillion thing now that was kind of started by one person and has no employees. And so I think like, at some point in the future, I don't even think it's that, bold of a proclamation to say that I think that will happen at some point, because that's just the way that the trends are moving. And I think things just kind of keep moving faster and faster.
So why do you think though that individuals now are mattering more than institutions? I agree with you, but what do you think about culture is making individuals, so Elon Musk and Tesla, a lot of where they are today, at least I would attribute, is the fact that Elon is a individual and we personify Tesla as Elon, and what white male doesn't want to invest in Elon Musk? I think it's just like what are your thoughts on how we got here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed that. Elon has really like come up the whole time. Not the whole time. He was at X.com and PayPal and whatever, but his whole Tesla journey has pretty much been while he's been on social media and while he's had a direct connection with people, and they've seen him get dunked on. I was at Tesla. I made a bunch of bad financial decisions in 2014 by selling like Facebook and Bitcoin and whatever else. One of them was Tesla, which I bought at 29 or something back in 2013. And then just like every day sat on StockTwits and Twitter and just watched people say that Tesla was done. They were gonna have all these issues. And there's just this crazy guy at the center of it being like, nope. And then when he was right, like dunking on everybody in a way that a company never, ever, ever could be like, hey, sure, it's like, suck it. You could never do that as a company. Right. And it's even crazy that an individual has been able to get away with that without getting fired or going to jail or all of that. So I think people are just a lot more relatable. Like it's fun to watch a company struggle and overcome adversity kind of, but it's way more fun to watch this one person stand up to institutional investors and stand up to the shorts and stand up to the car companies. It's like just, it's a story that you'd write, but it's happening in real time. And he's kind of narrating it in this crazy, very Elon-like way on social media the whole time. And like, that's just more relatable, I think, than a company putting out press releases and saying like, I think we had a pretty good quarter this quarter, everybody.
So you kind of discussed like three different creator toolkits that are being built. You have vertical SaaS, horizontal SaaS. I forgot what you did. The business in a box. We don't have to say the word SaaS that often because every time I feel the exact same way. I say macro trends. But what do you think about the creator toolkit being built, and any just general thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, Substack is the one that I use, although probably it won't be for too much longer. I think you at some point kind of graduate.
Let's unpack that. So why would you graduate from Substack? Substack's not taking any of your money right now, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, love Substack. It's been the greatest deal in the world. Definitely want a little bit more customization. Every email that I send, I get a message from somebody that says, hey, it'd be really nice if you would let us click continue reading. And then it went to the point in the email at which I had stopped reading. And I can't do that on Substack. And that's like one of just a number of very little things that I think would make the experience better. And so that's part of it. I talked to one community manager when she joined the company and was kind of doing outreach to a bunch of writers, but like I've never talked to anybody at Substack. So I don't feel like I have a, direct line to ask for any of those things. Whereas if I build something myself or work with somebody to build something, I can design the thing that I think is best for me. Also, the analytics are not great. I have no idea from week to week, like if my open rates are even accurate, and stuff that, for an ad-based business in particular really start to matter. And so just want to move to a different kind of ESP with a different front end and control that a little bit more.
Yeah, I saw you take a little jab in your last newsletter that you lost 1,800 subscribers and you don't know why.
Yeah, they just disappeared. I was just looking, and then it was climbing. They normally climb a little bit after people share, or they dip a little bit in the beginning because people are like, oh, I forgot that I subscribed to this, and then subscribe. Then people share and it climbs a little bit. And I watch, because I'm addicted to this stuff, like 20 times throughout the day. I'm checking that dashboard. And one of the times I open it up and it was just a straight line down and I lost 1,200 people. And like some of them kind of came back, but definitely not all of them. The other day, I forget which one it was, but everybody who uses one of those like kind of anonymous email services, like I had 75 unsubscribes from people with that domain in a row. I don't know if that's Substack or that company, but like not knowing is part of the problem. I think like I want something with that I can dig into a little bit more. So I'd say that's part of the reason. But Substack is great, and I would recommend to anybody starting out to go use Substack for sure.
But isn't that the life cycle of any big creator? So take I don't know, Logan Paul has his own white label membership service. Like, aren't we moving to a world where increasingly, like I'm sure the top OnlyFans people are going to start to get annoyed that they're giving OnlyFans the cut that they're getting. And as you rise further up that echelon, you don't need their help for discovery and infrastructure. Why would you use them anymore? And where does that put those companies? Because there seems to be a push for white label everything for the top 1%.
And I think all those tools, the business in a box stuff, are incredible because they let people figure out, I haven't really invested in many business in a box things, but for that beginning stage, like they let 1 million people try their hand at something, whether that's writing or making videos or starting a grocery delivery business on Dumpling or starting a trucking business or doing you can experiment with a lot of things in a pretty low risk way without putting in a bunch of capex up front. And that's incredible. And then at some point, some people are going to graduate to doing their own things with their own infrastructure and hiring their own lawyers and all of that. But, as I start the fund, I'm doing it on AngelList. It's a small fund. And so it makes a ton of sense. At some point, it'll make sense to hire a lawyer and have them write up the docs and do everything that way and get an accountant. But, I would not be launching a fund right now if it weren't for AngelList. And so like, there's a lot of things that it just lets you do the first thing and see if you're any good at it. And then if you are, then you can graduate to other things as you go.
Yeah, just an interesting spot. Because I imagine YouTube, and it's not quite the same because YouTube has that discoverability feature that a lot of
which Substack really hasn't done much on.
There. Well, it gets a little weird for Substack because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're subscribed to Packy and then now I'm getting served, I don't know, different people's Substacks.
Totally.
And that would piss you off because you're like, are you cutting me in on this? Like, how does this work? And so it does get weird. I just assume the top 1% bring in the lion's share of money. And if you're continually churning that top 1% because you have no reason to stay, because you can do it, that puts them in a tough spot where you're kind of a stepping stone to something bigger for the top 1%.
It's really tough. I think Substack would have been the best lifestyle business of all time. I don't understand the $650 million valuation or whatever they just raised that particularly well. But maybe they'll pull it off. I mean, they've done a great job attracting a lot of people with really, really big audiences. And if they can figure out what to do with those big audiences, then awesome. And I'd love to see them succeed because I wouldn't be doing this without Substack. But I do think it's a tough venture backable business.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say a 3-letter acronym, and you're going to explain how this makes sense for creators, because I get like the surface level. NFTs, what do you think about them? I conceptualize it in terms of artwork.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's this really interesting property of NFTs, obviously, which is that they can allow digital goods to be scarce, right? And like that's the thing. That's what makes art interesting. Mm-hmm. It's what makes someone feel comfortable buying something, knowing that there won't be a million different NFT versions, at least, of that thing. I think for sure there is a massive premium on almost any NFT right now, just for being an NFT. Like I think over time, to the extent that something has an analog either on Web 2 or in the physical world, the price of the NFT version of that thing will converge to the price of the kind of like one-of-one physical version of that thing. So if you're putting a GIF out into the world and somehow you're able to print one of them, like, and that was worth $50, maybe that sells for $10,000 now because it's an NFT and there's a bunch of people who have a bunch of ETH in their wallet and they're excited to support the ecosystem and all of that. And so like over time that converges for sure. But I also think it lets you do interesting things. So I minted one of my posts, the Power to the Person post, actually as an NFT, and sold it, and it automatically split proceeds from the sale with anybody whose work I linked in the piece. And like the idea of that was anything that I write is really just this like weird amalgamation in my head of all the different things that I've read in the past or that I'm referencing in the piece and all of that. And so like people should be able to split the proceeds, and I shouldn't be the only one making money off this thing. I think there's a ton of work to go between today when like, you know, I'm sitting there in a spreadsheet and saying like, I think Legion should get 8% of that and this person should get 2% and blah, blah, blah. And the future state where almost every other piece is kind of tagged as a unique digital thing, tagged as an NFT that like then just kind of automatically ties into future things that it's been tagged in. And like, there's a bunch of stuff that needs to happen before I think like the real promise of NFTs or something similar is like comes to fruition. But I don't know. I think there's just like, you can see the possibility, like the seeds of interesting possibilities of new ways for media to be owned and monetized and a bunch of stuff by having it be a little bit scarce. I think really the best property for it today is that it allows for price discrimination in your audience, and not like a bad way, but it lets bigger fans kind of pay for your work because they appreciate it in a way that they couldn't before, because it would feel really weird if someone Venmo'd me, you know, $6,000 right now, but if they buy my NFT for 2 ETH, like that actually feels kind of normal. And so I think that's what it's really good for today. Like the guy I sold it to, this guy, Clint Kisker, had him on my podcast the other day. And we just kind of talked about like why he bought the thing. Like, you know, he could read it for free. And he was like, look, I started a business, and this, you know, this shaped a lot of the ways that I'm thinking about what I want to do in my next business. And so $6,000 is really cheap. And then we got to meet, which was, I think, you know, probably fun for him because we got to bounce around ideas. It was really fun for me because he knows a hell of a lot more about media and entertainment than I do. And so it was this thing where it's like just an excuse for the creator and their bigger fans to kind of come together and have this shared experience.
Okay, let me see if I wrap my head around what you did. So you sell this NFT for $6,000, and then that money and the work that you reference in the Power to the People piece flows back to the people the work you built on. So Legion's Creator Middle Class, I'm sure, was in there. And so that money flows back to them. And you're envisioning a world where as those, I don't know, circuits get increasingly wired in a much better way, it automatically flows back in a way where, let's say, when they're reading your piece, so X many percentage people clicked on Legion's piece, and then you can kind of give her some of that money. Is that kind of where you're building that out?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like the fun part about this is who knows how those wires and connections will come together over the next X number of years. But I think things like that are really interesting, and that it just enables like automatically without overhead, without having to go through a bank or anything else. Like this thing sells automatically, it's pre-programmed to pay out to a bunch of different people. And then ideally in the future, every time I link to Lee's piece or somebody who's like kind of minted their thing as an NFT, that just becomes even more and more automatic. So hopefully it goes that way or some way like that in the future where you don't need to be so hits driven and you don't need to be like every week I need to grow and blah blah blah. But like, no, I put this really good idea out there that people keep referencing. So like I want to make a living off
It's
of
like
that.
it's like you have a masters of a song, and it's like a I don't know. You're Lil Wayne. You have a masters of a song, and that gets sampled in other songs in different ways, and it's been changed around. But you want to get some of that money back because you created the additional work, and they probably want to give it to you too. But right now, it's very antiquated, and that you got to deal with probably Birdman and the rest of the Young Money crew to get that sample, and it's probably going to take a little while. Whereas if you could do a much more automated way, so I get it much better now. Have you announced a price target for Ethereum yet?
This is for educational purposes only, not intended to be financial advice. I don't know, man. I don't see it stopping. Like the way I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and like there's the dumb way of pricing ETH,
I
which is
like the
like,
dumb way.
yeah, the dumb way is like, I don't know, Bitcoin's 56,000, doesn't do anything, but like, I don't know, ETH has to be at least like 10% that valuable, right? So it's 5,600 is my price target. I think that the really interesting way, and I haven't actually done this math because I probably need somebody to interview for a consulting job and have this be their case study, but like if you were able to have HTTP take a cut of everything that happened on the internet, like what would that be worth? That's worth a shitload of money. Even if gas
Yep.
fees come down to a very, very, very small amount, like to the extent that Ethereum is the network that things are built on, or like the majority of Web3 is built on, then like it's almost like unimaginably valuable to own something that makes a little bit of money every time something happens on Web3. The bigger risk, like I don't think the bigger risk anymore is that like Ethereum just goes away. I think the ETH2 transition will happen and it'll get faster and it'll get cheaper and all of that. And that'll be great and it'll be easier to build. And I'm sure there's enough smart people in the space that like the usability problems will go away and like all of that. The bigger risk is that while Ethereum is figuring it out, something like Solana comes along that makes it faster and cheaper already to build stuff. And so a bunch of projects move over to Solana, or the Flow blockchain is just way better for kind of consumer experiences, and you can put in your credit card and like it feels like you're having fun and you're dabbling in Web3, but like it feels like a consumer experience. And so Top Shot and whatever else is built on there like steal some of the, so like I guess that's the risk, is that there's 100 different internets that people build on, so that you're then owning maybe like 1/100th of this magical HTTP protocol that makes money. But that to me is the bull case, and I have no idea what that price target is. But like, just imagine if you got a penny every time somebody like did something on the internet,
You just went full crypto on us.
right?
That was awesome. I think you dropped like 8 different coins, gas fees. I mean, fuck yeah. This is like makes me want to buy some Ethereum, and well, I already have some, but buy more or whatever, Solana and all the other stuff.
And I just want like, this is what I mean when I say I'm an idiot. In the beginning of the pandemic, like I had 15 ETH that were I think at probably $300, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is so stupid. Like, why did I'm now writing this free newsletter, like, and I have money in this stupid coin. Like, I'm gonna sell these and just make $4,500. And so like, obviously that ends up being a 45,000 or no, $40,000 mistake. And like that kind of stuff happens all the time. So total idiot, and like, do what I say, not what I do. But bought in at a much more expensive price and am not going to sell this time.
I looked this morning when I first bought Dogecoin or however you pronounce it, like a what? And it was if my initial $1,000 investment would have been worth like 200K today if I
Yeah,
had sold that.
I wrote about this, but I bought 38 Bitcoin in 2013. Like, I guess I read the announcement that Union Square was investing in Coinbase. And so I was like, oh, let me set up an account. And I was at Bank of America at the time, so I couldn't really buy stocks, and like you had to go through approvals. And I was like, ugh. So I just bought these 38 silly Bitcoin. And then I went to Oktoberfest, and again, I felt bad that like I had just quit my job at Bank of America. I was going to go to business school. I decided not to. So I was unemployed. And I was like,
The
you know
money
what?
became real to you. That's exactly when it changes. When you're just like, why am I money in this? Like, it's real to you suddenly. Because
I was up 50%.
Or I had 40. I had a lot of Ethereum. I don't remember how many I had. And it was the money got too big that it became real to me at the time. So you sell. And it makes you stronger. But I'm not afraid to admit that I'm like, yes, I agree with you.
It was a $2.4 million mistake. Selling this 38 Bitcoin.
Maybe that'll Packy's $2.4 million mistake. That's a good title for this. So let's wrap up. I want to finish with a question on what you did wrong. And everyone says I've done a million things wrong, but is there one thing that a route you went down when you started the newsletter where you wish you could have done differently? Because far, it seems like all you do is get things right, and it's kind of annoying to all of us. So
yeah, I'll go the other way and say that I don't think there's anything that I've gotten terribly wrong, and not in like a bad way. Like because every week it feels like I've gotten everything wrong, and like I think the hard thing for any creator is that they know what was left on the cutting room floor, and like nobody else does or cares. But every week I'm like, God, I wasn't able to work that thing in and whatever. And so like there's a million micro things that I'm like, shit, like that could have been a little bit better. But I'm happy with where it is, and it's better than I would have expected. Like literally, if I could have paid rent with this newsletter and bought more time to figure out like my real job, I would have been happy with this whole thing. Like even if I just got to meet the smart people that I've gotten to meet and like get to do this, like I'd be happy. So like I can't say that I got anything like horribly wrong because it's ended up in a really good spot. So I there's nothing that I really regret.
Yeah, and that's a totally fine answer. I think what's inspired in me though is just I don't know, you see these transitions now. I interviewed Joe Pompliano last time where he was working at what was he working at? Chase. And then he just transitioned and now he has a newsletter. Now he's, the toast of the town of sports media. And those career transitions, he would have had to, I don't know, go to Syracuse, learn, sports media there, work his way up the ESPN ladder, be, Darren Ravel's, boy for like 4 years, and then he becomes his own thing. And you're able to make these moves largely on the back of the power of your content, but there's not these gatekeepers along the way that are saying you have to follow this career trajectory to get to where you're getting. Because like no offense, no business, you have no business writing what you're writing, but because your content's good. You don't have the credentials, but you have the content. And you're investing in companies because you have the content, not the credentials. And it's just, I sound like Gary Vee when I say that, but it really is true where the credentials just don't matter as much anymore. And to take it full circle, the individual really does matter more than the institutions. And you're a perfect example of that.
Couldn't have said it better myself, but I do think that's really true. Like it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, right? Yeah. Like as everybody knows, like I can't imagine like Joe probably has like a pad of paper where he's like writing ideas and whatever. Like it's like a lot of hard work, but it doesn't, I guess there's less like wasted steps.
Right.
And it's just like you're spending all the time on the hard work instead of the things around the hard work potentially.
Yeah. I mean, hearing you had a great graphic of just your emotional journey when you write something. And I think that really brought home just how every creator feels, because there's this idea that, I don't know, you probably whip up these newsletters in like 3 hours and what, he's just an influencer, or these YouTubers, oh, you just put out a video of how great your life is. It's not very hard. Or Joe, oh, you just do Twitter threads. It's fucking hard. It's not easy. If everybody could do it, everyone would do it. But now we're at a place where the content is somewhat at a level playing field where no one's saying, Packy, you don't write for Bloomberg. Why should I trust your opinion on X Main Street?
Totally.
I mean, some people are, but a lot of people aren't.
I think it actually, given what I'm trying to do, I think it really helps not to be associated with an institution or like, exactly people are like, what you just did is like not journalistically correct. I was like, yeah, no, of course. I was paid to write that thing, or I wrote about a company that yeah, of course. That's definitely like J School would boot me out for doing what I just did. But I think, that it lets you build kind of new models that you couldn't have done the old way. So I think that part's fun.
All right, that is the episode, folks. How fucking smart is Packy? I mean, that guy is just smart. If I could buy stock in someone, I would buy stock in that guy. In terms of takeaways, I just this theme that I didn't plan on, but it just keeps on happening, is how these career changes that have happened thanks to technology. So Twitter, Substack, and YouTube. If you think about someone like John Boy, he was a wedding photographer. Now he's the CEO of a sports media company. Joe Pomp, he was working at JP Morgan. Now he is one of the biggest names in sports business. And then you have Packy. He was, worked in business operations and strategy at Breather. Now he's one of the biggest writers in technology. There's these moves that can happen now, and they can happen so fast. I mean, for Joe and for Packy, these moves happened in less than a year. They went from a completely different job to something they are really, really passionate about. And there's not all these gatekeepers along the way. They could make that move fast. And I don't think we fully appreciate how fast things are changing, and how fast that no one asks Packy, what are your credentials? No one asks Joe Pomp, what are your credentials? No one asks John Boy, what are your credentials? People can win on the basis of their content, which is, I think, an incredibly exciting place to be for content creators. All right, that's the episode. Please, subscribe, 5-star review, do all the things, and I will see you guys next week.